The other thing I think that's important for business leaders to recognize is when it comes to phishing, people are going to click the link. If a single click on a phishing link is going to cost your business $100,000, you're doing it all wrong.
Yeah.
We've got to take those data points, figure out what it is that they're failing at. Are they struggling with impersonations of the IT department or HR department? Then we turn around and then deliver more education. But again, it's all about that culture, all about that influence.
Welcome back to another episode of Unraveling IT, Expert Tech Talks. I'm Garrett Wiesenberg, VP of Solutions Consulting here at Corsica Technologies, and today I'm joined by TJ Patterson, the Information Security Officer at a local community bank. We're going to take a look behind the curtain at what it takes to run security at a modern financial institution. We're not just talking about generic best practices or frameworks, we're talking about the real tactical day-to-day operations and what it's really going to take to secure the modern financial institution at scale. Welcome, TJ. It's great to have you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So what does information security look like from your perspective as it relates to, the financial institution or running it at a bank?
Yeah, so, information security for us is largely, protecting the confidentiality, pretty common, right? If you have sensitive information, whether that's internally, making sure the data stays contained within those lines of business, or externally, we don't want the general public, obviously, to see sensitive data. And some of that's driven by compliance. You have things like the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, and there's other regulatory groups that require us to do certain things. But then there's also just, doing the right thing, right? Think about it, even with your organization or any others that have any level of sensitive data, it's our job to protect that. And then secondly, another big component is around our technology systems. So if you think about it, we as a bank, while we're local here in Indiana, we invest a lot in technology. Therefore, there are lots of new cybersecurity risks associated. And so for us, there's always a lot of pushing the envelope, making sure that we're ahead of even those regulations. There's another component here. So while we deal with cybersecurity, we're also involved with paper, right? I mean, people still use paper, people still write checks. Companies still issue checks and pay stuff.
I actually just had to go get a check yesterday from the bank because I don't own a checkbook because no one uses checks anymore.
And think about it. What's on that check? You've got your
routing
name,
number,
address,
bank
routing
account
number,
Yep.
account number, all the things a cyber criminal needs to do the really bad thing. And so our job is not only to protect information in cyberspace, but then we also protect it on paper. And that goes across, in our case, 35, 36 locations. Then on top of that, I think in total we've got around 75, 80 locations where we have a digital presence, where we put even a video ATM. So we've to speak towards some of that innovation, we've put video ATMs in rural areas so that people who can't necessarily get to a bank, they can go to that video ATM and get the same level of service. So again, it's really protecting that confidentiality, that availability of that information. You look at the news and the media and you see all these companies, hey, look who was attacked by this threat actor or this ransomware happened. Our goal is to make sure that doesn't happen to us, because one, that involves data being stolen, but two, that involves a massive disruption to our business, reputational risk, so on and so forth.
So what's a typical day in the life of TJ Patterson look like?
Yeah, so a typical day doesn't exist. It's very interesting. Fortunately, so in the role I'm in now, in the past, a lot of my roles were more reactive in nature. So I may be focused on a particular project, spending a lot of time on that. But then, organization A or whoever I was serving from a customer standpoint, they would have an incident or an event that required attention. So I would always get deviated. Whereas now, a large portion of my role is more strategic. So it's about, planning ahead, planning months ahead. So I can say, all right, I'm going to spend, 4 hours this week focused on security management activities. That may include third-party risk. So I'm involved in our third-party risk management program where we assess our trusted partners to make sure that they have adequate controls to protect customer data. Because the reality is we're a bank. We're not capable of doing all these other things, but other organizations are. And so there might be a week where I spend 4 hours. I might even spend 16 or 20 hours just looking at third parties.
Wow.
There may be another set of 2 to 3 weeks where I'm doing nothing but IT-related activities. I'm looking through configurations of systems to validate that what IT is delivering is appropriate for our risk appetite. But then I may go weeks where I'm doing a lot of presentations. And in fact, here in a couple of months, I'll be speaking to a large number of business owners, business leaders. I'm working with one of my colleagues at the bank, and we build out, kind of a show with it, make it a little bit entertaining, but also bring a lot of value. And so I can spend weeks building the right presentation, learning how to tell the right stories, and then do that. And so again, it shifts.
It's all about telling stories, right?
Storytelling, it's key.
Yeah. So can you maybe touch on some of the differences between the regulations in a banking industry versus, maybe manufacturing or just your standard, small business or something of that nature? What's different?
Yeah, so some of it is, some of it's similar, but you also have the, audits and exams. So in our case, we go through annually in some cases, sometimes it's every year and a half, different types of audit engagements where we're required to. We'll have bank examiners, so the actual regulatory body that enforces rules and governance on banks, they look at us and say, hey, are you all doing the right due diligence from an IT perspective? So when you look at IT controls, are your controls not only in place, but are they effective? Let's look at that over a period of time. So in a lot of other industries, you'll hear things like, we need to have policies, we need to have standards, procedures. Well, we get audited on that stuff. And so frequently we're having to show things like, meeting minutes, let's say, from 6 months ago to prove that a governing body inside the organization received communication, approved the set of policies. So it's no longer about what kind of policy can you produce. Yeah. It's about, can you show that you've produced it? Can you show that that policy is effective, that employees know about that policy? And so that's just one example. But we also deal with multiple regulating bodies. So you have things like the CFPB. I think it's into maybe data retention territory sometimes. That's more of a compliance and fraud related, but there's still data retention. We deal with the FDIC in our case. We have guidance from an FFIEC handbook, which is another examination group, and they provide guidance, but essentially that guidance is law per se. And so we're assessed to make sure that we're following that guidance.
So really it's more about the oversight and the accountability.
Correct.
These governing bodies are really holding you accountable to whatever the regulations may be, whereas other industries may have similar standards or regulations, but the auditing is less stringent.
Correct. Yeah, and I think there's a misconception. I think some organizations look at it and they say, let me just check the box. And some people, that's how they approach it. For us, we certainly want to check the box, make sure we're doing things the right way. But again, for us, it's more important that we push the envelope. We align better with things like NIST, cybersecurity framework, the CIS controls. We want to align with those and not just do the bare minimum.
Well, and part of it's got to be cultural. I mean, you've talked a lot about putting systems into place and, putting the technology wherever you can. But at the end of the day, the end users or your staff are really the weakest link within your organization, right?
Yeah, so staff are certainly, when it comes to those links, that chain of protection against your organization. At the end of the day, humans are going to fail. I'll just say it candidly, right? So think about phishing. Everybody knows about phishing. And two things I like to cascade. One, the thing that people see as phishing. So the thing I think about is, how do we influence the culture through phishing? Everybody sees the phish report button. We can emphasize how important this thing is, but if you can take that button and you can somehow relate it to these other 10 security topics, well, now they're going to be able to relate to that. When you give someone the easy button, I call it. When you give someone the easy button, you can say, hey, person, I want you to report this thing. We want to make it easy. You don't have to submit an IT ticket. Just hit the button. And when you hit that button, we'll deliver a response back to you that says, hey, this was a confirmed threat. It came from this group. Here was a business email compromise. We can deliver all that back to a user with low labor effort on our part. And then now they know, hey, I was able to help stop a thing. Not only that, but we can take that simple report from a user, and if 300 other people in the company were targeted as well, we can rip that message out of their mailbox, and we can now tell that story. And then the other thing I think that's important for business leaders to recognize is, when it comes to phishing, people are going to click the link. If a single click on a phishing link is going to cost your business $100,000, you're doing it all wrong. That's just how it works. People are going to click that link. In our case, there's a percentage of users that we have every month or 2 months during those tests. We know what percentage of users are going to click the link. And instead of very black and white saying, all right, they failed, we've got to take those data points, figure out what it is that they're failing at. Are they struggling with impersonations of the IT department or HR department? We take things like that, then we turn around and then deliver more education to make sure that they're getting it. But again, it's all about that culture, all about that influence, because that then sets the tone for when we do need to do the really big things, whether that's third-party risk, whether that's tabletop exercises and incident response. people take it more seriously.
And it's really a security-minded focus and just keeping people aware and bought into the idea of security, because I think that's usually the hardest thing with any, I mean, you can tell me, I mean, any cybersecurity professional is getting the buy-in from the organization tends to be the hardest part.
Correct.
But it seems like your bank is fully bought in and you guys are there. I mean, that's why they have an ISO.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think for us, we're pretty well bought in from the top down and also from the bottom up, which again, that's important.
That's
in our case, you think about, people on the front lines of any bank or financial institution, they may be dealing with a customer who comes in and says, hey, so-and-so, they stole my life savings. I mean, there's businesses that will lose tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars over these simple things. And so when people on the front lines hear those stories firsthand, and that emotion hits and they're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Again, that light bulb starts to go off. And again, that lets us be able to deliver the messaging we need.
Yeah, so along those same lines, I mean, what's your personal approach to getting that buy-in and getting that culture built within an organization, across departments, from the top down or bottom up?
A lot of it's storytelling. I mean, that's a big thing. Storytelling, I think, is critical. I also think a skill that's very undervalued is listening. People just don't know how to listen. So security professional, just talk about the industry as a whole. Sometimes, whether we're consulting, whether that's internal or external, we come in, we say, hey, here's all the problems we see, let's get them fixed. But they fail to listen to what the business leader is looking for. But if a person comes in and can listen to those executives say, hey, here are the problems we're having. We're struggling with the customer journey, or we want to minimize customer friction, let's say. Well, then as a security leader, can you take that and say, all right, we know that MFA and these other things can cause friction. How do we make sure that as we push those things that are necessary, or as we pitch those things, we can prove, hey, these aren't a big deal. If anything, doing this stuff now teaches your customer that we're in alignment with their expectations. So customers of any business anymore, they expect a high level of security. And so when you can show executive leaders that, hey, this is the expectation of the customers you're serving, we're helping you get there. We're enabling you as a business to get there and aligning with all the risk management we need to do. To me, that's one way to sell that.
How is strategy defined at the executive level, and what's your role in kind of shaping the overall strategy of the security of your organization?
Yeah, so for us, as many organizations, your corporate strategy is built from the top. And then in organizations that might be a little bit larger, there are governing bodies inside those that may build I'll call them sub-strategies. So in our case, there's a strategy within our IT group that aligns with that corporate strategy. And then more specifically, I chair a cybersecurity committee. So we have a dedicated committee focused on cybersecurity. And that then feeds up into our IT group, our IT committee. And I help facilitate with that committee. Here are the things that I'm thinking based on everything I've seen. So I've looked at the business. I know the risks in the business. I talk with other people, and that's one mechanism of how I learn about those risks. Take all of that together, make sure I understand what the corporate strategy is, rolling all the way down through IT, and then piece together kind of a draft. Here's what I think makes sense. And then I bring that to this cyber committee, and then we talk through it in depth. Because the people on that committee, you have representation from IT, you have representation of compliance, fraud, all these different groups that are involved with risk management to the company. And then we collectively help formalize that and then adopt it. Once that's adopted, then over the next 12 months, as we execute on that, as a committee, drill through those key action items. That's how that gets adopted and built. And then from there, it's all about executing that. And that's done through multiple methods.
So really, you're there to influence.
A lot of influence.
Yeah, a lot of influence.
Influence and storytelling.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about.
Influence and storytelling. Do you have any creative or maybe non-traditional examples of how your organization has implemented security?
Yeah, so for us, I mentioned we deal with paper. And one of the things we do to validate its effectiveness, so making sure that our sensitive documents are shredded or secured every day, is we do an audit. So after hours, we don't announce it. We go through facilities, and we will actually comb through people's desks. We'll break into everything. As a security professional, sometimes it's a lot of fun, but our goal is to make sure that data isn't sitting there. And historically, what we've done is we go around, we look through desks, we write up a report, talk to managers. Reality is it's just boring, and influence isn't quite as strong there. So then we decided, let's print out business cards. Because if you think about it, hit any of those 5 human senses, you start to influence subconsciously a message you need into someone's head. And so we printed out these business cards that say pass or fail. And I kid you not, when you drop a pass or fail off on everybody's desk, some people freak out. They're like, oh my gosh, am I in trouble? We had to manage that a little bit. That was a struggle. And then after talking with some teams, what we ended up landing on is this really cool branded business card. The very top, it's green. It says you passed the audit, but underneath it says opportunities for improvement. We can check a box because it might take us 4 or 8 hours to go through a facility.
Yeah.
And we do a pretty thorough job. And then we document it on our spreadsheet. We pipe that into, we've got Power BI and all sorts of tools set up to measure that. And we can actually say at the end of the day, here's a dashboard that shows the percentage of success. So we're no longer quantifying, here's who failed and passes. We're saying, here's a facility, here's its risk when it comes to Clean Desk. What is the risk that information is going to be out? That's how we measure it.
Yeah.
And if we have someone blatantly doing a thing, we deal with that. But at one point during this, and this did not work well, but I did get a sample set of smells, right? The 5 smells. And I got one that smelled like, fish smell. It was a terrible idea. Thought, here, let's put these on the cards that fail or don't do well. Did not work. So we didn't continue to do that. But as crazy as that sounds, again, you think about it, it's so different. But what we found as an outcome is people take these cards, and it's, again, this sounds elementary a little bit, but it's like Pokemon, got to catch them all. So people will collect these cards, and they will brag like, hey, I got to pass. And as goofy as that sounds, you think about it, you've just influenced this culture within pockets of people. And then over time, a year later, when I'm walking around the building, hey, don't be dropping a card on my desk. What that means is that person now knows Clean Desk is important. They're not supposed to leave data out. They're now an advocate and a champion, and they're not a cyber committee. They're not any of these formal structured governing bodies. They're out there selling cyber on behalf of information security. That's the power of influence. So a little bit unconventional, but it works.
I would say that fish scent on business cards is wildly unconventional.
Yes, unconventional, a little far. We decided to not do that one.
Yeah. You hit on the topic, though, of reporting and piping the data that you were taking from those field tests into, Power BI or whatever it may be. Obviously, as an ISO, I'm sure you're delivering reports at an executive level on a consistent basis. What are some key metrics that you typically hone in on that you think most organizations may not focus on?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's fundamentals, right? I mean, if you think of system patching, Windows patching, most of your networked environments are going to be Windows. There's yours Macs occasionally, but a large portion of the enterprise is going to be Windows. So you need a strong patching program. And when you think about executives, I say this loosely, they don't know what patching is. They know, hey, there's a system update, and I know that it protects my business. So as subject matter experts, IT teams, in our case, our IT team says, look, we're telling you that patching is important. So then as an executive, they need to know that what you're saying is important is being done and measured effectively. And so for us, it's about service level agreements. So if we say that patching is important, you need to be patched within 2 weeks of that being delivered, we want to communicate to executives that 95% of the organization or 97% is patched within that 2-week window. And then we have a report that shows that it was done. So that would be in your patching territory, very fundamental. When you look at phishing, I think different organizations, I've seen some where this model of 3 strikes are out, and yes, clicking phishing links isn't great, but when you look at phishing, you're looking at the overall risk. So here's the percentage. Say you're a company where 2% of your organization fails phishing tests every month. Well, if it's not the same 2 people, is the risk really that heavy? But if you take that 2% and you're like, oh, wait a minute, there's one person in there that they seem to always be in that 2% bucket, then you can dial into that and manage that. But again, it's more about showing executives risk. They don't care about how many packets were dropped in a firewall. They could care less.
They don't care about the IT aspect of it. They just want to know, is my business at risk?
Correct.
And if so, how?
Yeah. And so those metrics are always based on risk management.
Yep. One item, TJ, I don't think that we've touched on yet is what's the differentiator between fraud and cyber?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's what I would consider this intersection, right? So you think about organizations other than financial institutions. What you see in the news, what you see kind of marketed is, ransomware. That's the big thing. The reality is it's a real threat. It will shut down your business. It costs money. They extort, so on and so forth. But when you think about it from a labor perspective, so you have these underground businesses that commit all this cybersecurity activity. So you have call centers. You can buy ransomware as a service, phishing as a service, go do all these really bad things to scale. But think about banks. Banks manage money. When you call into your financial institution and you need to wire, say it's a large wire, we're talking hundreds of thousands, and you need to move money from point A to B, imagine a cyber criminal. They don't need a call center necessarily. They don't need, ransomware as a service. They don't need to deal with all that. They can now just get really good at breaking into a couple of email accounts, convincing a person of it, and they can walk away with $250,000 instead of spending months inside of a customer environment or a business environment trying to do the really bad thing. It's a lot more cost effective for bad guys. And so for us, we'll see business email compromises. We'll see things like domain squatting, where businessa.com is the domain, but then the bad guy turns up businessa.com, but they swap out the U with a 3 or whatever the case is. And if someone's not paying attention very closely, that can result in a ton of money lost. And so for us, we see a lot more fraud in that space. We see social engineering. I mean, you've got all the, the acronyms in the cyber industry. We see phishing, we see smishing, we see vishing, we see cyber criminals put themselves in between two different parties, calling the opposite party and convincing them, hey, I'm your bank, I'm trying to do this thing. Here's the first 6 or 8 digits of your card number. Can you just give us the rest of it so we can verify the security on your account? Well, guess what? That data is public anyway. But in that moment, the consumer doesn't realize that. So then they're like, yeah, here's the rest of my card. Next thing you know, bad guy has a card number. That goes into the pool of things to be sold on the dark web. And so part of what we get into is, things like brand abuse. We are very active in stopping some of these social engineering campaigns or websites that are designed to steal user credentials of consumers. So that I think is a very key difference. And so when it comes to, I talk a little bit about storytelling. A lot of IT professionals, they see ransomware, don't click the link. For us, that's a big piece of it. But also, it's about how do you communicate? How do you respond? If someone sends you an email and says, I want to do this transaction, or I need to update data on my account, any organization, if you rely on a person to send you information like a driver's license, they send you a driver's license and you go update it on your account. Well, if your organization has security built around that, around calling the customer, reaching out to whoever's on your account, if a bad guy can do that 30 to 60 days ahead of time, they now have gotten into your business, updated their contact information maliciously. They sit for 60 days. Then when they call in, they can circumvent different controls. There's tactics like that are used. And so that I think is one of the things we deal with more in the banking industry.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe switching topics just ever so slightly, but have you seen any real world impacts of this, AI boom when it comes to cyber specifically?
Yeah, so specific with cyber, the one I think a lot of people see, and we certainly see it, are just around email communication. So often, not always, but often in the United States, a lot of the communication and the threats coming in aren't based out of the US. And so there's a language gap. Other parties trying to commit these acts, they don't fully understand the culture. And so when they communicate, they might struggle a little bit versus when they have AI and they can say, hey, imagine I'm in the United States. They get tools like WormGPT. So you have ChatGPT, you also have FraudGPT and WormGPT. They can take those where it strips ethics out. They then craft an email to an organization and say, hey, speak as if you're in the US. And now they've hit that cultural barrier, or they've passed that cultural barrier. So that's one thing we certainly see.
Wow.
In terms of scale, I mean, the deep fakes, we see some brand abuse where AI is used. I will say we do see a lot of times threat actors will, do their really bad thing or set the stage. And we may see those activities, for example, if threat actor wants to set up a website and try and steal passwords from somebody, those are done within minutes. They're not done within weeks. They can do it within minutes. And we're able to see that through the tools they're using, AI tools or whatever, and they're able to do that to scale. Then they sit and they wait. So now they have efficiency with AI tools to build their infrastructure. They sit for weeks before they do the bad thing, and then they go after the bad thing.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Along the same lines, what do you see as the state of cyber over the next 5 years? Like, what are the incoming or upcoming trends, threats that we should be paying attention to, or where do you see this evolving now that AI can do these deep fakes very quickly?
Yeah, I think AI is the I'll just call it a buzzword. It's the buzzword across the industry. Everybody talks about AI, but I do think AI is changing the game. I mean, I'll tell you from personal experience even, I can leverage AI tools to do things that would have otherwise taken me weeks, and I can do it a lot faster. If I can build, let's say, a brand, or I can build the foundation of a business within seconds, think about these underground markets. The entry point, and actually this is a thing to really think about and be cautious of, the entry point for getting into cybersecurity, there's training everywhere to do that. But the entry point to learning how to steal money or commit fraud, that entry point's a lot lower too. So imagine somebody coming out of college, they're strapped for cash, or whatever circumstance they have, they're like, man, what the heck? Let me just take this $200. It's only company A, they can afford $200. They learn how to use these AI tools. that's the next level of real threat is they're just using the tools to get a bunch of cash.
It lowers the barrier to entry for both the good guys and the bad guys.
Correct.
Essentially. Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing. And then there's certainly, and I forget where it was, there's a country that, there's quantum computing, some of that, I think. As soon as someone really gets into that space and they're able to crack password hashes, I think that's going to open some new doors in a bad way. But definitely AI, and I think that's specifically it. That barrier of entry is a lot lower. Also think about brand abuse. So think about reputational damage. If you look, there's plenty of videos, a lot of humor videos, not exactly business appropriate, but there are a lot of videos all over the internet right now involving AI. So here, I want you to show me a video of this. What if you can convince an entire group of people? I mean, we're talking nations, like actual countries, or even consumers of a business. If you get upset with a business and you can write a thing that says, hey, show me the CEO and the CFO doing this, you can convince the broader public that this really happened, everybody's going to share everything. Whether they look at Facebook, they see one little picture, and then they share it. And that stuff, it goes viral, if you will. And so I think that is going to cause reputational harm in the wrong hands of somebody.
Yeah. I've actually seen a few videos where the AI created image or video is better quality and more realistic than the, professional VFX shots. So
it's unbelievable. And think about it from this perspective. You've got all these AI companies. They're trying to do good things, right? They're trying to sell and show how awesome this thing is. Well, people are excited. Everybody knows about ChatGPT now. People are now, let me try this, let me try that. Literally the entire globe is feeding all this information to all these tools.
And that's kind of where I thought you would go with it, because organizations it's difficult to stop people from using ChatGPT, and people need to be trained on what information is okay to share and what information is not.
So think about this. If you're, let's say you're in sales and you're trying to sell to somebody, but grammar isn't your thing. You can go out to ChatGPT, Copilot, Google Gemini. You can go in there and say, here's my email. Write it for this type of audience. I'm an IT person. I don't know how to speak to an exec. Write it for an exec. But if you plug in account information, not thinking about it, well, all of a sudden that data, technically that's by definition a breach. Depending on who you are, it's a breach when you put that sensitive data into ChatGPT. That data is now in the pool. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, I've seen cases where in our organization, we've had people contact us thinking, hey, this really bad thing is happening. You're involved. Well, no, we're not. It's Google's AI tool gave you bad data because of all of what it collected. It's completely inaccurate. But I think, as an organization, you can say, look, don't use all these tools. But the reality is it's all across the globe. And it's kind of like mobile phones. Early on when those were coming out, nobody's going to, businesses don't want to deal with mobile phones. Nobody wants the iPhone. Guess what? That's high business impact if you don't have an iPhone now or any kind of phone. Well, think about AI. It's all over the place. Everybody wants it. Consumers want it. It will be in businesses. No matter what people want, it will be. And so businesses have to think, how do I use that tool that everybody wants and it's going to happen anyway? How do we wrap controls around it and enable people to use it in a safe way?
So TJ, I know we've covered a lot today, and I want to thank you for being here, but I do kind of have one more, I'll say, parting question that I typically ask all guests. What advice would you have for someone who might be a cybersecurity engineer, an architect, looking to jump into an ISO role or even a CISO role, or somebody that just may not have the title but still wants to lead? What advice would you have for them?
Yeah, I would say, several things. One, I think I touched on it earlier, is learn to listen. So I come from a very technical background and in a lot of cases was a subject matter expert. The reality is, moving into this role, I essentially know nothing. I mean, I've had to relearn and learn things from the ground. And so I've had to learn to listen. I'll give you an example around audit and compliance territory. As an engineer, I never necessarily agreed with certain things that were conveyed from auditors or examiners. However, now that I've sat in this seat, I've learned that I need to talk and partner up with folks in compliance, build relationships with folks in these other areas, because the more I'm around them, the more I learn, this is how they think. So as I do my own job, even if it's technical, I now can switch and I can think a little bit differently. So learning to listen has been huge. Building relationships is huge. Soft skills really is the biggest thing for me. Mastering storytelling and influence. I mean, I still call myself a beginner. I'm still learning, but if a person can really hone in on that skill, you can do a whole lot of things. But I think most importantly, whether you master storytelling, influence, relationship building, is authenticity behind it. So I think a lot of times, I'll look at in the sales space and any kind of industry, I think a lot of times, hey, what can you do for me? Let me make a buck. Well, I think in a role like this, not only do you have to do things on behalf of the organization, but you've got to make sure if you ask somebody, hey, tell me about your weekend last week, actually care about it.
Yeah.
And keep authenticity in there. And
Don't-
that's key.
Don't do the Midwestern thing where we're like, hey, how's it going? And everybody's just like, good.
Exactly. Because, I mean, you can absolutely do this role without any of the authenticity. You can
Yeah.
make it all up and do your thing. But if you don't have authenticity, that shows your character.
All right. Well, again, thank you for coming in today. Really
Absolutely.
appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me.
I found your insights to be very valuable, and I hope our audience does as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, man.